In Ulster, the police are taking over more and more of the security role from the army. It's a policy that puts the police in the front line of the confrontation with the terrorists. The IRA have just done their worst, killing 9 officers in one attack. TVI reports on the changing role of the toughest policing job in the UK. The reporter, Julian Mannion.
It's 5 a.m. in the town of Newry. The police are about to pick up a suspect after the IRA mortar attack, which killed 9 officers. Police mobile units surround the suspect's house. The object is to waken the man and arrest him, while the rest of the neighborhood goes on sleeping.
What's your full name, sir? What's your full name, sir?
Jim.
You carry on then. Well, at the moment, the police search team have gained access to the house, and we've confirmed that the occupier of the house, and we suspect was the occupier, is in fact there. The search team commander has taken the search team into the house and is presently explaining to the occupier what is actually happening and showing him his authorization to search the house.
20 minutes later, the man is taken away. He was one of 35 people pulled in after the Newry attack. So far, 2 have been charged, but the key men have not yet been caught. Newry is 5 miles from the border, 80% Catholic. It's one of the hotspots where the Royal Ulster Constabulary has taken over security from the British Army under the so-called Ulsterisation policy. The IRA mortar attack has put that policy under the spotlight. One long-time critic of the RUC's frontline policing is the Catholic lawyer Paddy McGrory.
Well, of course, the IRA, because of the historical security role of the Royal Ulster Constabulary, see them in much the same way as they would see the British Army, as being their enemy, and to that extent these 2 armies face each other. And at the same time, the RUC has this great problem of trying to conduct its normal policing. This is a dilemma faced nowhere else in the world that I know of.
The attack on Newry's main police station inflicted the worst casualties in the RUC's history. The effect, seen the morning after, was devastating. Porter cabins smashed to pieces along with their human occupants. Numbed RUC men staring at the wreckage all around them. And revealed in daylight the deadly IRA contraption which fired its bombs with such appalling suddenness in the direction of the station. In the course of the Troubles, Newry police station has had to become a kind of fortress. But inside these walls, life has normally followed an orderly routine. On the evening of February the 28th, policemen and women were sitting chatting in the canteen when 200 yards away, over there, the IRA set off their mortar. There was the whine of falling shells, the blast of the explosions. Afterwards, a local man told me, there were no shouts or screams from inside the police station, just a terrible silence. It was one stray bomb which killed the 9 RUC officers. They included 2 women, 4 reservists, and a chief inspector. 2 of the victims were Catholic, in a force where Catholics number about 1 in 10. The full horror of that night may never be known, for the RUC is tight-lipped with its emotions. Flowers are still arriving for the dead. For many local people, we're as deeply shocked as the police.
Thank you.
The messages of support surround a permanent memorial. Inside the RUC community, reaction has ranged from numbed sorrow to anger. One police widow whose husband died in an earlier attack said this about the terrorists.
They've left a path of bloodshed, of sorrow, I mean, it doesn't stop at myself. It stops at every woman, every wife, every son, every child, every grandchild, as my little grandchildren. The effect it has, it goes on and on and on. And it's just unbelievable.
You just have to carry on because the public still have a service which they quite rightly expect from the police. And although you have a major tragedy and disaster such as this, you still have people having traffic accidents and houses being broken into and people locked out of their cars and all the routine mundane things that we deal with as a police force, because that's really what we're here for. And terrorist activity, you can't just let everything drop because of one tragedy such as this. We were all very shocked and numbed about the thing, but we have to carry on. That's what we're here for, and that's what we're paid to do.
But this homemade mortar, a truck and some gas cylinders, is posing a whole set of questions about the RUC's policing. One problem is the random element in the attack.
The effect of a small charge going off in the base of this tube will actually cause a great force to be imposed on this flat platform. Therefore, by the time the second, third and fourth mortar are starting to go, the platform itself will be moving. And obviously that will affect the aim of the other mortars.
It's introducing really a random element into the aiming of the device, isn't it?
Yes. All mortar systems are basically area weapons rather than specific target weapons. It is very, very difficult to hit a specific target with a mortar, and especially with this sort of platform, which is going to be moving around when they're actually fired.
This was the 18th time the IRA had used their so-called Mark 10 mortar. Previous attacks had often hit the target, but killed only 2 people. This time, luck ran the other way. What it proved was that an RUC station can be a soft target. One vital question is how the mortar truck was brought into the centre of Newry.
You weren't in this general vicinity along the stretch of road roughly this time last week?
I wasn't.
You weren't at all? No. Do you remember where you were? No?
I'd be in the house.
That's fair enough, sir. Okay, thank you.
The truck was stolen, armed and fired all within 6 hours, but no one will publicly admit to seeing anything.
I think you have to get back to the old idea of the meaning of the word informer in the context of Irish history. Nobody wants to inform. And indeed, as well as that, you have to understand that there are certain valid feelings, anti-feelings as regards the RUC. People over a period of time have built up a very deep mistrust that is going to be very, very hard to move. I would say at the same time that there were many people whose sympathies lay with the police on that occasion, as people. People who would have been eager to help, but people at the same time would be reluctant to see even those responsible for such a dastardly action taken to task.
Gentlemen, we take details of a stolen car, vehicle stolen from Dromore, County Down, during the night of the 24-hour period.
The cutting edge of the Newry Police is their divisional mobile support unit.
Registration number is JIJ, that's Juliet, India, Juliet.
There are now 26 of these units, set up as the RUC has taken a more active role in the fight against terrorism. The mobile support unit is a closed world. None of the policemen serving in it actually live in the town of Newry. It would be far too dangerous. Video games help to while away the time as they wait for the next call, which could be anything from a burglary to an IRA bomb. The mobile support units are armed with high-power rifles. Their equipment and special training has given the RUC a force capable of handling the most dangerous situations. For the government, it means the conflict is being Ulsterized. For these men, it means they are in the firing line.
November 450, for your information, we are on normal patrol Newry, George Street, Gloucester.
In spite of the armoured Land Rovers, there are some parts of town that the RUC enter with great caution.
This area has been used for pepper bombing, and indeed it's been the case in the past where even concrete slabs anything up to fridges, and indeed in one particular night a fridge was toppled off the top of the building towards the police at the ground. However, on this occasion there was no injuries. This is St Clair's Avenue here, and the INLA have mounted bomb and gun attacks on the police from this very street here in the past. In fact, 2 officers were seriously injured in a gun attack from this place. However, we have our job to do, and we try to do it as professional as possible. But definitely the fear is always in your mind that someday it will be you.
How to police these areas is at the heart of the RUC dilemma. There are people here who want normal policing, but who see the green uniforms and the guns as symbols of British oppression.
You must see it that the police here have to act in ways differently to the police on the mainland. The RUC originally meant to be a civilian police force, a normal police force doing the normal policing job, are now caught in the situation of being cast in a dual role. On the one hand, to do that particular job of community policing, I believe with a great deal of success, admirable success in many cases, but apart from that, they are tied with the other aspect of combating subversive activity, capturing or even, unfortunately in certain circumstances, shooting dead from terrorists. And I think in those circumstances, a big number of the nationalist population are very, very reluctant indeed to accept, never mind support, the RUC.
Responding to a break-in at a local school is the kind of routine police work that the RUC are determined to maintain in Newry. But even as the police arrive to look into it, they still have to be protected by the mobile support unit. At the back of every policeman's mind is the fear that the routine call may be an IRA trap. 211 RUC officers have been killed so far in the Troubles, many of them ambushed or bombed, doing normal work of this kind. Many an experienced officer is only alive because he followed his training and his instincts at a vital moment.
I went along and went up to the door of the house. I was standing closer even than I am to you at the moment, and knocked the door, and I wasn't quite happy with the situation. There was a broken window, there's a curtain missing off an upstairs bedroom, and the curtains in all the upstairs bedrooms were identical, and the one that was missing was the same as the curtain behind the door with a broken window. So at that point I decided that it wasn't quite all it appeared to be, and I got myself and the other police away. It transpired later, as I said, that there were 2 300-pound bombs in that house. One of them was immediately behind that door and would have been detonated if we tried to make an entry to the house to try to contact the man.
It is true, isn't it, that in many cases the wives, let's take your own wife for example, cannot live a completely normal life because of the work that her husband is doing?
She obviously has certain worries. We all take certain security precautions. We do check our cars for booby trap devices. Simply because my wife has a car of her own, it doesn't mean that her car is going to be immune from a terrorist booby trap attack. I have seen photographs of an incident which occurred some time ago where a policeman was taking his young daughter to school in the morning, and as he moved off, his car was literally blown apart. Both he and his daughter were killed.
I think it's a terrific strain on the families. Each time their husband goes out, you know, I'm sure they wonder, as I did many times, they wonder if it's going to be the last time.
That particular night, he was on mobile patrol. The car was ambushed. At 11 o'clock, 2 police officers arrived at the door with my sister-in-law, took me to the hospital. I never thought he would die. I knew when I saw him that he was very seriously ill. I'd been told he was very seriously ill, but I still held the hope that he would live. He died at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was very heartbreaking to have to tell the children.
There was warning at one time that he could have been shot, and they knew his time when he came home. They knew everything about him because we were living in our own Catholic area. But the community, the circle that I lived in, are very great people, wonderful people. And the thing was, he was at risk. And we had been warned, and John could have left, but he didn't. He stayed on. He was not going to be intimidated or frightened out. He held on. And I'm very proud of John. And it's just... I think it's the atrocity of the act.
About a week before he was killed, he gave me instructions for his funeral. He wanted everything private. And he sort of went through papers, sorted out different things, and had everything, you know, things tidied up for me so that I wouldn't have any problems. But I just didn't want to face that.
It's unfaceable, isn't it?
Yes, I just felt it wouldn't happen to me. But I think Cyril knew himself that was going to happen.
Nowhere is the RUC's job tougher than at Fork Hill, a joint police and army base in South Armagh. The army unit here at the moment is 2 para. Virtually all movement is by helicopter.
There will be 4 RUC with us today, 5 with the inspector, okay? Be aware, when we're crossing 17 Alpha and 17, okay, we
in the Falklands, these were the men who took Goose Green.
Last week.
Today, they're about to guard an RUC patrol in the bandit country along the Irish border.
Across the border.
The company dog comes along for luck.
West. Is there any questions? Any questions at all? No? Okay then. We'll move out. We've called you out for whiskey for 1:30.
At a cost of hundreds of thousands of pounds to the taxpayer, virtually all police patrols are flown in by Wessex helicopter. Too many Land Rovers have been blown to bits by IRA culvert bombs. The arrival in a farmer's field goes off smoothly, with soldiers and police scattering to the edges of the landing zone. The police on this patrol asked us not to show their faces. Back in a safer area of Ulster, they have homes, families, and children. With practiced ease, 2 para appear on a road just 100 yards from the border, and then disappear again.
Oh, it's a great day.
It's the RUC men who carry out the sudden random car check that's one of the purposes of these routine patrols. The countryside is deceptively peaceful, but there are always soldiers covering the RUC men's flanks. With the British Army presence in Ulster reduced, this is one of 3 hot areas where the RUC still needs the protection of a unit like 2 para.
Tango 10 Bravo, moving now on the green to the next serial, over.
Even here, with the local population largely against them, the RUC still tries to maintain some kind of normal policing. In this case, a clearly doomed attempt to find the owner of an untaxed car.
The Datsun. Is he at the prison down south? Yeah. Does he come up here often? I've never seen him since. You haven't seen him since that? Well, see if you do see him, will you tell him to call with Constabulary? Have we inquiry for him? All right? Okay, Thomas. All the best. Cheerio. Bye.
Ulster's Chief Constable says his force can handle its growing responsibilities.
You must recognise that the military strength has been considerably reduced because we have required less support. You must also recognise that the military are not by any means to be seen throughout Northern Ireland, but rather in small areas where the terrorist threat is great. I'm satisfied that we can perform our dual role, one of dealing with terrorism, and providing a service to the community adequately. I'm satisfied by the results of the past. I'm satisfied by our strength now, which will be projected to the future.
At a police laboratory, they test the latest captured weapons used against the RUC. One problem with a growing security role is coming up against the most modern high-velocity rifle of a type that even the British Army has not yet acquired. And this is the latest weapon in the IRA's arsenal. It's a homemade grenade launcher found when security forces ambushed and killed 3 IRA men in Strabane. And once again, the idea is brutally simple. The gunman takes a homemade grenade with a shotgun cartridge at the end and inserts it into the barrel. Pulling the trigger, sets off the shotgun cartridge and fires the grenade. Last weekend, a weapon of this type was fired at an RUC Land Rover. 2 men were slightly injured. The police response has been to train their men on their own modern weapons. The Sterling submachine gun is now standard issue. This is part of what Ulsterisation means, and there are many in the nationalist community who see the policy as a terrible mistake.
Well, I should have thought it has been an unmitigated disaster, both politically and for the RUC. When these troubles began, they were seen for what they are, an outbreak of political violence, a form of civil war and later insurrection. And it was dealt with by the British Army as one would have expected. And when this new policy came in to present it as some form of outbreak of rather annoying civil disorder without any obvious cause, the RUC were put into the front line, so to speak, and the army were drawn back. That might have seemed to somebody in the British government as a very good political idea, but I'm afraid it was, as often happens in Ireland, a searching for short-term advantages and solutions which are not a solution at all. And it's been a total disaster for the police.
The graveyard of Armagh Cathedral is one place that the RUC's critics and enemies often point to. In one corner are the strident gravestones of 2 Inler men whose deaths still haunt the RUC more than 2 years later. Roddy Carroll and Seamus Grew were shot down at an RUC roadblock. At the time, the 2 men were unarmed, and at once the cry went up that the RUC has a shoot-to-kill policy. A month ago, the nationalist community reacted angrily again when 3 armed IRA men were ambushed and killed in Strabane. This time, the shooting was done by the SAS, but the decision to mount this kind of operation was taken by the Royal Ulster Constabulary.
One can understand instances where some policeman faced with a very dangerous situation fires and possibly killed somebody. Possibly it was a misjudgment that he did so. But the recent cases are cases, a number of them, where ambushes have been carefully laid, and that has been quite clear that has been done. Now, ambushes require planning, require some premeditation. They require decisions as to what will be done if the quarry turns up, as to whether one shoots or calls upon them to surrender, and so on. Where you find a growing number of the ambush type of case, well then the fear must grow that there is indeed such a policy dictated not from the policemen on the ground who fire, but from a higher level.
Any person who will examine that statement with an intelligent approach will realize that there can never be a shoot-to-kill policy. Police officers are responsible, accountable to the law which they themselves apply. There cannot be, there is not, and there will not be a shoot-to-kill policy. It's a contradiction in terms. We act within the law and we apply the law properly. There are, unfortunately, people in this community, not many, who would only be satisfied that police, soldiers would be murdered before they were permitted to kill those people who are murdering them. That is a nonsense.
This year, the RUC's passing out parade took place in the shadow of the Newry attack, and only 3 days after the murder, in a separate incident, of one of the training centre's own instructors. It's a policing job that may well grow even more dangerous, and which its critics claim is deeply flawed. But there's still no shortage of recruits.
They recognise that this is a job which has to be done. The families are proud of their husbands, their fathers, being members of the RUC. This is not a problem. They have a sense of pride that they are providing a service to a total community in the most difficult and, unfortunately, too frequently dangerous circumstances.
The idea that this conflict can be contained by a police force that's mainly Protestant and loyal to the Crown is now being put to the test. For one widow, the sacrifice remains bewildering.
And honestly, if a man like John that did so much and served his community for such a long time, a full-time policeman, he did so much for the community, served them well, you know, and then these men can come forward and do this. And when they were asked, some of them, why they did it, they said, oh, we didn't kill him, we killed the uniform.